Chairman, if I were the ranking member, I'd be very careful about reproaching this administration on inflation. We need to remember every dollar that you had the day that Biden and the Democrats took power was worth only 79 cents the day they left office. Compare that to Trump's first term. Every dollar when he took office was still worth 92.5 cents when he left office. And since he's returned to office, a dollar on Inauguration Day is still worth 97 cents today. That's still too much inflation, but it's a fraction of what we suffered because of the spending spree that the Democrats unleashed and that produced the worst inflation that Americans have suffered in 40 years. He's correct that gas prices have increased to more than $4 a gallon nationally as a result of the international supply disruption, but that's brief and temporary. If the ranking member is concerned about long-term gas prices, I invite him to come to California, where the Democrats' war on fossil fuels has caused the highest gas prices in the United States. It was $6.19 a gallon yesterday in Sacramento. And that's a long-term problem caused by the very policies that his colleagues advocate nationally. Mr. Vogt, I don't need to lecture you about the precarious condition of our nation's finances, and I believe the domestic reforms that you're proposing are an essential element in restoring fiscal responsibility. But I take a very different view of grants and subsidies than Mr. Doggett. In my view, grants and subsidies are the root of all fiscal evil, specifically grants to politically connected organizations where there's little oversight or accountability, grants to pay for local projects that benefit one community at the expense of another. If the federal government needs a good or service it can't produce itself, it ought to send out an RFP, award a contract to the lowest responsible bidder, and then hold that bidder accountable to the terms of the contract. Subsidies cost us hundreds of billions of dollars. They substitute the consumer judgment with the judgment of politicians, which both reduces the quality of life of Americans and the overall prosperity of our country, and again, goes to well-connected business interests. How do you see things, and how does your budget rein in this waste?
Thank you, Congressman. This is one of the areas where we've really tried to tighten how federal dollars are spent, looking at NGOs that are the ones that are sending this money out the door. Many of our concerns on the foreign aid was because they were going through NGOs that don't share this administration's perspective on a host of issues. And we are very concerned with regard to nonprofits that are in receipt of these grant programs and have a very different governing philosophy than this administration. So we're going to do everything we can. This is a $70 billion cut to non-defense discretionary. Many of these are at the grant programs that you're specifically talking about. When you're $39 trillion in debt, you can't begin to deal with the non-defense side if you're not willing to pull back on these grant programs that unfortunately, even if you were to assume that they're a dollar spent is a dollar advertised, when you dig into it, you find that that's quite frankly not the case.
The Manhattan Institute's economists estimated that just in California, $180 billion has been lost to fraud just during the administration of Governor Gavin Newsom. Federal taxpayer dollars that were entrusted to him to manage. That's $180 billion. That's roughly $4,500 for every man, woman, and child living in California. We've seen whistleblower testimony of billions of dollars lost to Somali fraud in Minnesota, while Governor Tim Walz went after the whistleblowers. We've heard an audio tape of Minnesota Attorney General meeting with Somali fraudsters as they assured themselves that they had each other's backs. Their words. How much do you estimate is lost to fraud in these programs, and what are you proposing to do about it?
Our administration cares deeply about the fraud problem that we have in this country, particularly in many blue states across the country, as we've seen in Minnesota, that you identified in California. We've established a fraud task force with the vice president in the lead, and part of that is to remove government barriers that may be working to be able to ensure that people are prosecuted for fraud or that they don't have the resources to investigate it in these programs. We want to make sure the Department of Justice is going after fraudulent claims. We want to make sure that the agencies have that resource, and we want to get after this. We believe that fraud destroys the American people's view of government. Quite frankly, if you're on the other side of the aisle, I think it destroys people's view of what the social safety net should be. And so it's vital on a bipartisan basis that we
Yes,
get
but
after the fraud in our country, and this administration is going to do it like never before.
But as we learned from the Ellison audio tape, it does enrich their supporters. Yield back.